Anyone who presents themselves should be able to rent from you. You should say yes and give them the key and let them in.
That seems like a good idea to me.
Oh, yeah, right.
Like, oh, you know what? You did 20 years in the penitentiary for a lot of bad stuff, and you've been evicted 52 times?
Yeah, come on in. Come on in.
Yeah, here's the keys to my car. Welcome to the Millionaire Mentorship Podcast. We talk all things real estate, business, and entrepreneurship, and sometimes we talk politics. And today we're going to be talking politics with Stacey Johnson-Cosby from Reese Nichols, a housing advocate, a real estate investor, and a realtor. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So the reason that you're here is there's something going on in Kansas City right now that a lot of people are not familiar with, and you're very familiar with. And it's actually, according to a lot of people I've talked to, it's going around the country. Can you talk to what I'm talking about?
Sure. There's a move towards socialism amongst a lot of people that consider themselves housing advocates, which they really aren't if you really break it down. There's socialists that are out of Chicago. There's a movement called the People's Action Movement, and they are infiltrating cities and states across the way. And what they do is they disguise themselves as housing advocates with their tenant protection laws, and they have their little t-shirts and matching t-shirts and then the little homemade signs different places, and they'll go and say that they're looking out for the average tenant or the renter, and they're advocates for affordable housing. All things are false, but it is their storyline and it's working. Their messaging is effective.
Well, I think what they're effective about is, like you said, so I remember when we fought the HOA lobby in Las Vegas, is they had all these people that were paid to be there. They looked like they were a well-organized unit, but the reality is they were just paid. And it looked like, from looking at the Zoom meeting that you were at in person, that it was just like a bunch of paid people from KC Tenants. Now, when you look into KC Tenants, you see there's a girl who runs it. Her name is Tara. I don't remember her last name. Do you remember?
Ragavir.
Tara Ragavir. She's an Australian-born, and she went to Harvard. It looked like she grew up in a very privileged life in Mission, Kansas. And her agenda, I don't know what it is. I have zero idea what it is, other than to disrupt what is going on right now. Do you know what her agenda is?
Well, of course it is, and you're exactly right. It's disrupt. And then along the socialist philosophy in housing, nothing is privately owned. And so you know how the socialists say you will own nothing and you will be happy.
Yeah.
So that is their goal. And so what the thing that, and I don't take her background away from her. That's her business, and lucky for her that she lived that life. But I'm worried about the people that she's influencing, that are following her lead now, that don't really know what's happening. In my mind, and I hope this isn't too harsh, but I think they're being indoctrinated, that they're getting a lot of followers who are thinking they're doing the right thing, they belong to something, they're part of this movement, and they don't really know the true movement. Her goal is social housing, to eliminate private ownership of real estate. They want to decommodify housing. It should not be for purchase. You should not be able to buy or sell real estate, really.
Right.
And so that's one of her goals, is to decommodify housing, and the second one is to disincentivize speculators, those of us who are investors and developers and builders, to disincentivize us and basically put us out of business by making the laws so horrible that we leave the marketplace.
So what have you done to try to fight this? Because you've been kind of leading this this is how I met you, just to let you know. I don't know if I told you this. So we have an excellent dog sitter, and his name is Dog. And he was on your email list. He's like, are you paying attention to what's going on? Do you want me to get you added to the list? And I said, yeah, absolutely. And I got added to your email list, which are very organized. You're a highly organized woman. And so I get all these emails. Everything's like, hey, this is where you need to be. This is where it needs to go on. And I'm like, okay, this lady's on it. And when I saw that, I'm like, I don't agree with this. Like, I don't want to, so many people want to be the quiet voice. I don't want to be the loud voice, but I definitely want to speak up when something is complete bullcrap and it's being shoved down and and the thing that really pissed me off, and I'll tell you this, I'm going to speak very straightforward with you. They kept using the word discrimination. You're an African-American woman, and they were using the word discrimination. The council people were using the word discrimination. The people were trying to do and they're trying to divide us by trying to say, oh, you know what? You landlords are bad people, even though we're providing affordable housing, which is a non-for-profit activity, a 501(c)(3) activity. They're saying you're bad people and you're racist, basically, is what I heard. And so it's like, okay, I can't go in down there and like, what am I going to say? You know what I mean? Like I've fixed over 100 houses in 18 months. I moved to Kansas City. They're going to be like, oh, well, you're a greedy landlord. It's like, okay, you guys have the problems. So how do you see what they're trying to do? Because can you break down what bill that they passed and how we stop it?
Okay, yes. And then I want to go back a little bit if
Please.
I can. And part of my testimony is to say, first of all, I'm a housing provider, and I'm tired of them calling us racist.
Yeah.
Because we are not racist. And so the group, the tenant group, what they've been successful so far in doing is painting the picture that the person they're trying to help is a black woman. A black woman with children is the typical voucher holder for the Section 8 vouchers.
Right.
And so that's what they use as their argument. And they must divide it. It must always be us versus them. Rich versus poor, property owner versus renter, landlord versus renter, black versus white, all of that, the oppressor and the oppressed. So that is their messaging very successfully. And so one thing that I found is that, and I don't normally look at race, it's not important to me, it's not important to my everyday life, but in this particular case, in that particular day, I had to tell the black woman who was calling us racist that I, a black woman, am not a racist. And I am tired of her calling my peers.
How'd that make you feel that they're kind of categorizing you as a racist and you're an African-American woman and just because they're calling you racist because you own rental property, essentially it.
And so it's silly.
Right.
I mean, it's just silly, a silly argument. So my hope is by saying, hey, I'm not racist, that they look at the silliness of that to have a black woman saying I'm not racist.
Yeah.
Crazy. And calling my peers racist. I mean, it's just a stupid argument, just plain and simple.
Yeah.
And so my hope was just to disarm, because I saw her face go from a smile to like, uh-oh, when I said that. And I know her. I know most of them and have for a long time. But anyway, the focus is housing. So you know that what we try to do, we're in business to create housing, period.
Right.
We want to create housing. Somebody walks to our door, we have a vacant unit. Our goal is to say yes.
Yeah.
I want to say yes.
Absolutely.
But I have to do it in a smart way.
Yeah, you don't want to. And there's the other thing that I didn't think about, and sorry to interrupt you, but I want to address this before it leaves my mind. Is like they said in this law that you have to accept people with criminal records. What about sex offenders? Was there a carve out for that?
No carve outs.
Yeah. So exactly like what they're saying is that, oh, you know what? This guy who just molested 15 people, who's now out on jail. Oh, you got to accept him. You can't use his criminal history, even though everybody else is going to use it, but you as a housing provider can't use it. Like, they wouldn't hire him at the city. They wouldn't hire him at KC Tenants. They wouldn't hire him for a job.
Well, the city had, the argument that they use is they have banned a box where you can't use it against them for the city. And so they're trying to put this in place in real estate, but it's silly to think that, especially if you have an apartment building, you have those people living so close together, and all of a sudden you have a violent criminal in there and you can't say no. I mean, it's just, I don't know how many times I'm going to use the word stupid, dumb, silly, but I think this...
I'll use them with you. This is the stupidest. And you mentioned something on the phone. You don't think these people have even read what they're trying to propose?
I don't think so. I think the council members have not.
Yes.
And because if you, first of all, anybody with common sense, if they read this ordinance, you're going to look and say, this is crazy. You're going to say that. And so I have a feeling from some of our meetings with them that they haven't read it thoroughly. I think the KC Tenants put they did a snow job on a lot of people. They told them, here's what's in it. And they had their little sheet that had some things on it. And so people are like, oh, that sounds good, I'm with you. And then they did not read it. And so the city attorney actually worked with them to put it together. And keeping in mind who them is. So in a room you have these tenants.
So the city attorney
prepared the ordinance that was put in front of all these council members who didn't read it. So normally they would, hopefully, I would think, collaborate with people. So you have a housing policy, talk to the people who provide housing.
Yeah, makes sense.
All they had in the room were the yellow shirts, the tenant groups in the room, dreaming and scheming, they call it scheming, of all of the things they can throw in this, everything but the kitchen sink. Other places that have the source of income ordinance do not have you can't use the credit score, you can't use all that other stuff.
Right.
They don't have that in there. They threw everything in there, plus it impacts homeowners. So someone who owns a home, you may think, oh, this is just the housing provider, landlord issue, this doesn't impact me. It impacts anyone who's going to sell a piece of property as well. So you may be Mary Smith with your little 3-bedroom, 2-bath home in Brookside that you're going to sell. Wake up. This impacts you too. Because what they do with it is they expand the protected classes. So we know the protected classes, fair housing. You can't discriminate based on race, color, familial origin, and handicap, all of that. Now, all of those. And so they added in source of income. And so now all of a sudden you can't discriminate against someone if the ordinance passed as written, someone who has a low credit score, who may have been removed from the last property because they had damage reports, someone who's been evicted, which means they didn't pay for their past rentals.
Why would we not want to accept them?
Exactly. Criminal history, an arrest history, all of those things. And you can't also discriminate against someone who gets their money from, we don't know where. Maybe it's cash. I don't know. And maybe it's some kind of, maybe they just started driving Uber 2 weeks ago, but they don't have a payment history behind them or an employment history. You got to take them all. And you can't say that you must make 2 times the rent amount or 3 times the rent amount. No qualification. So the ultimate goal for the socialists is there's a housing guarantee. Housing is a human right. Everyone has the right to have housing, regardless of ability to pay for it or not, regardless of background or not. So literally, if it passed the way it was written, anyone can present themselves to you and say, hey, I want to rent your unit, let me in. You have to say yes, or else be subject to a discrimination complaint.
And a fine.
And a fine.
How much is the fine? Fine
is $1,000. But what happens though, those complaints don't have to be grounded. You get 3 of them, you're gonna get a fine. You're gonna have to open up your books. They're gonna have to come in and examine, they get to examine all of your books, and then you get your permit put on probation or taken away from you.
How do we stop it?
Well, okay, so what we're doing, the council, there are 13 members, including the mayor on the council. 7 votes can make a difference on anything. Absolutely.
Right.
So what we know is before we got it slowed down, they had 6 votes, 6 sponsors in favor of the ordinance. It's like, oh my gosh, the moment we found out about it, there were already 6 sponsors signed on.
So we have 6 people that are opposed to it.
For it.
6 people.
They had 6 people who sponsored it who said, I'm putting my name on that.
Oh my God.
Half of whom did not read it, I'm sure, because if they did, something's wrong with them.
It was Raina Shaw, Park Shaw.
Right, the mayor.
The mayor.
Andrea Boo.
You
had Eric Bunch.
Yeah.
Daryl Curls.
Yes.
How many is that? Is that 6?
It's 5, I think.
5.
Have you talked to these people individually?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What have they said?
So we've been, as soon as we found out about it, the first thing, 2 things. One of my first calls is to call our realtor lobbyists at the state level saying, can we preempt this? Can we stop it at the state level so that they can't put it into effect at any city in the state?
Right.
And so they're
How do we do that?
They're working on that. And I understand outside of that there's some movement there. So we need to look at the state level to get the legislature there to preempt it, to say no source of income in any city. So we're working on that. But the way I think the legislature is now and the environment there, nothing's going to happen soon. And so it's going to take a little time. We're going to have to watch that. So that was my first call. Next call, we started setting up meetings with the council members, the ones that we thought were reasonable, who did not have their names on their sponsors. And so we met with several of them. And we had, and when I say we, it's the KC Regional Housing Alliance that we formed a few years ago, probably back around 2019, to respond to some of the stuff coming out of City Hall. And so we're a group of groups. So all of the groups, the professional groups that are the landlord groups, the investor groups, the realtors, the property management groups, all of those leaders and some of their members sit with us at our table at the KC Regional Housing Alliance. And we speak with one voice for those of us who have rental properties or serve those who do. Collectively, with our organizations, we represent over 100,000 rental units in our region. And the council knows that, the mayor knows that, city manager, they all know that.
So I got a few questions. So number 1 would be, why do you think landlords were not a part of the ordinance drafting the process?
Because first of all, the KC Tenants, the socialist group, they were the ones drafting it. They don't like us, they don't like capitalism, and they don't
Why do they have so much power?
That's the question, because they have a loud voice. The squeaky wheel gets the oil. So they are loud. They will disrupt, and you used that word earlier. They actually have manuals that talk about how they disrupt people, how they get politicians and others to cave to their way. They have a manual talking about how to create tension in a space. You go embarrass them on the job, you embarrass them publicly on social media. That's all in a manual.
Really?
That's what they do. So their whole goal is to quiet the voice of dissent. Anybody who's against them, they will target them. They will pick a housing provider and they'll put them on their slumlord Saturdays, or they'll target them, and then they'll flood their reviews with negative reviews, and they'll call them every kind of name you can think of. And
just
so
a bully group.
They're exactly, that's what they do. They bully, they terrorize people. They do that to elected officials. They've done it to the mayor a few times. Well,
that's why he's caving, you think?
Perhaps, or maybe he believes it. I don't know. So anyone who puts their name to it, something is wrong with them in this world that they're willing to put their name on something like that. And you have to wonder what's going on with them.
Yeah, it just, when you see like an ordinance like this and you're like, these guys are actually trying to pass this, I lose all hope. I really do. Are you kidding me right now?
Not yet. Real estate is too important. And you know the value of it. I know the value of it. My goal is that more people invest in real estate. For a couple of reasons: family legacy, generational wealth, retirement strategies. I told you my husband's retired because we have real estate. So real estate is so important, and it's a way towards freedom and financial independence for people. I want people to have hope that that is indeed the case. And I can't, so if I want them to have that, I can't sit back and watch our private property rights get eroded by a group of people who, for the most part, have owned, their tenants have owned nothing. They've never owned a piece of real estate in their lives, and they're sitting there dictating policy. And then these council members, 13 people sitting there with the power to vote that creates the policies in our city, they're going to hear from us. I'm not going to sit back quietly and let them get away with it, because it's
I love the fact that you're leading the charge, and I want to be a part of anything that you're doing, and I want to support you any way I can. I told you, there's got to be somebody, there's got to be a leader, and it's you versus Tara the way I see it. I'll tell you what, I don't even think like she cares about the people. She's just trying to get her agenda done for whatever her political motive is. And, you know, people who don't live here or aren't citizens here, I don't even know if she's a citizen here, but I don't think she lives here. I think she lives in Chicago.
She lives on the northeast side, somewhere in the
No, she lives on, she has an apartment on Armour. I already pulled the full thing. She has an apartment on Armour, okay, and she has an apartment in Chicago. And the one that she probably lives in is in Chicago because it's a lot nicer, okay? And she's also a tenant, but she also grew up, two parents who are doctors, right? Very privileged person. My parents were not doctors. I was not privileged. I was a renter. So I understand what being a renter is. I think you mentioned in your testimony, you also grew up as a renter.
No. Not, my mom and my husband's mom, single moms, owned their homes.
Okay. So I grew up as...
my husband and I, when we were first married, we rented. And we bought a home.
Yeah. I think you did say, though, in your testimony that you understand being a renter because you were a renter at one point.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. When we were first married, yes.
Yeah, and so I've rented many homes. I never thought I would own homes. I grew up poor, and so for them to put us landlords as people who, I'm sure you're proud of your like accomplishments with owning real estate, for them to cast shade on you and say you're a bad person, how does that make you feel?
Luckily I don't care what they think. I care about the other people who are watching us, those of us who are investors, those of us who are telling them home ownership is an option, property ownership, investment is an option. I don't want them to see that, because personally, to me, it doesn't matter. It goes off my back because I know it's important. I just want people to have hope. The very people that they're saying they're trying to protect are the people that I want in home ownership. I want them to buy. If the tenants are so interested in providing housing for everyone, they need to pull their resources and buy houses, just like we did.
Well, you know, you can buy a house with Section 8 money.
Oh, yeah. There's a voucher program that, absolutely. I mentioned that in my testimony. That's right.
Yeah, I think I did hear that. But yeah, I've known that. But I think you reminded me when I heard that. I was like, yeah, absolutely. So there's like government money for all that. So, and the funny thing is, too, like if you look at Kansas City and really where it's affecting, it's the historical Northeast. I own a bunch of properties, there are over 100 in that area. And there is probably over 10,000 vacant houses in that area that the city freaking owns, that I have tried to buy from Land Bank. And they could solve the problem on their own with their own dime without having to go into our pocketbook. But they choose not to. They'd rather pass a law that negatively affects the citizens that put them into office. And I'm really upset about it. And I want to get into some more details. So I have a few questions for you. So in your opinion, can there be a middle ground where there's an incentive for landlords to accept these vouchers like Johnson County has done?
And so that's the first thing that popped into my mind when I saw the punitive nature of this, to try to force me to participate in a government program against my will. Really? Right. You're going to make me sign a contract with
Sounds familiar. Right. We just got through that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so for them to try to think they were going to do that, it's like, okay, so my mind has to think, okay, how can we respond best to this? And we had just this summer met with the Johnson County, the housing authority there, and then they have a housing coordinator on staff that's a new position because Johnson County is a little more serious about it than Kansas City is. And so we met with them this summer and we learned about their landlord incentive program. And that program, it was great. It was so great that I'm thinking, okay, maybe the next properties we buy need to be in Johnson County because they are supportive of ideas that work. So what they did is they did a survey of the housing providers in Johnson County and said, why don't you accept the vouchers? What would it take for you to accept the vouchers? Right. And so they actually did the work by asking. Right. And they came up with a landlord incentive program where it gives you a 2-month bonus, so 2 months free rent for participating. Right. And one of the other concerns that people have about voucher holders, based on past experience, is that many of them leave damage behind that we're not covered for. And so that is their experience. It's not a stereotype. It's something that's happened.
Yeah.
And so Johnson County, in their program, they put a damage mitigation fund in place. And so the two big things that would...
So they're in it with you.
Absolutely.
Versus... It's all on you, Stacey. Suck it up. We're passing laws. We don't care.
Right, and we're going to program to what is important for you. If it convinces you to do it, we're going to do it. We're going to incentivize you.
Well, the way that you're describing, that helps both people. It helps the landlord and it helps the tenant. This way, it's like the fox guarding the hen house. It's like, let's go and tell all the employees who work for their bosses that they're going to tell the bosses what they're willing to do. Because that's exactly what this is. Let's go tell the prisoners in the prison that they're now in charge of the guards.
Right.
Like, because, I mean, I'm going to make that, I mean, there's no, if you're renting, you're making a contractual obligation with a landlord to rent their property.
That's right.
And you're going into it like willing, ready, and able. So, okay.
And so the benefit then is that 83 families who otherwise would not have had a home now have a home. They're voucher holders in Johnson County, and 24 housing providers have decided to participate in the program. And so they've hooked them probably for a while for the, you know, when the next vacancies come up. But those families now have housing by choice. And so, and you have to have a heart, because my husband and I, we've rented, we accept vouchers when we want to, because we choose to.
It's just the Housing Authority of Kansas City is too hard to pass.
It's just
it's their nightmare. I had to put dirt on paint chips out there, and I was like, this is a joke. We're done.
Right.
We have 100 properties I have in Mississippi. 90% of them are Section 8. I was doing the same plan out here. You know why they're not? We couldn't pass.
That's right.
It was harder to pass a Section 8 inspection in Kansas City than it was to get an FHA loan in Kansas City. I've never seen, and they take their jobs way too seriously. Like, this is a house. Like, okay, is it safe? Yes. What makes it not safe? It doesn't make it unsafe that every plug does not work, okay? Right. If you go in most people's house that they own, you could go check out my house. I'm sure it's brand new. I'm sure there's a plug that doesn't work. Right. But I can't get a voucher on there if I'm a tenant. It's ridiculous.
Or if you're missing a pull string for a light fixture, that could fail it. I mean, just silly things.
The stupidest crap in the world. It's the most obscene Section 8 I've ever dealt with in any city ever.
Right, and so we have a relationship as our KC Regional Housing Alliance with Ed Lowndes, who testified that day as well. And so one of the things that we did pre-COVID, COVID changed everything, and everything got turned upside down, is we met with them. We said, okay, here's what it would take. We created a list. Here's what it would take for us to be happy working with the Housing Authority, and that we can get some of our peers to jump on board and participate as well. You know, answer the phone on, quickly, return your emails, and get the consistent list of, what are you going to be looking for in the inspection, that every single inspector, all of those things, we created a list and shared that with him, and we were working towards that. He had it switched up in his...
That's Ed?
And his staff.
Okay.
And he's a great guy, great to work with, but he's kind of running a big old monstrosity. Yeah. And then we had some problems with him. So he is willing to sit down with us. And one thing that he said that I thought was great in light of all of this is he said it's about relationships. So the question is, will it work to force us? He's saying, no, it's more about relationships and building a relationship with the housing providers instead of trying to force us to participate.
What's wrong with Jackson County? Why are they doing this?
Well, Jackson County has different issues too with the property tax assessment. So Jackson County has a problem, the city of Kansas City has a problem. Yeah. So imagine being in this cesspool of problems with ineffective elected leaders. And so we have a problem all the way around. Right. But our voices have to come through in some way. We can't just give up.
Not enough people vote. They don't know who they vote in. They don't pay attention. The people who are elected don't read the bills that they pass, and that's why we got a bunch of problems.
So we help read them for them. And then we sit down with them and say, here's what you didn't read, here's what it said, and then here are the problems it's going to cause if you don't change it.
So what are your plans to prevent this law from going through?
Okay, so we're going to go, we had a strategy meeting today. We're going to come back again first week of January. We're pulling together research and data. Yeah. So some of the people that are part of our team in our industry are some of the smartest people I know. We have to be smart to survive. Right. And we're business people, we're entrepreneurs, we look to solve problems. So we're going to get some research. Had a couple council people, and we kept hearing it, that they said this is in 120 places. It's working there and it's beautiful there. Two things we know: that it hasn't been around long enough to see if it works or not, because this is all new to us. Yeah. And secondly, the data does not necessarily say that when you talk to the housing providers. And so we're doing some research. Yeah. We're asking our peers across the country, what do you know? What have you seen? And we're also doing a survey here, our REA group, our Mary Kim Tucker. She put out a survey, and as of yesterday, 4 o'clock, she had about 130-something responses. We need more.
Yeah.
The responses are showing that if this is put into place, many people will sell.
Yeah.
We're going to take that information to the council and say, is this what you want?
I don't think they care.
We're going to find out.
Yeah.
Because when we sell, you know who's buying.
I think we got to fight fire with these guys.
Yeah, you're right. And so maybe you have
What about a temporary restraining order?
Well, okay, so we had attorneys on the call as well today, an attorney in particular, and we think that it's going to take someone being hurt, you know, an actual housing provider, once the law is passed.
Well, it's a class action lawsuit. You have a class of people, landlords,
right,
who are affected, who are going to be hurt. Mm-hmm. And so as a class, we could file a lawsuit against the city.
Perhaps, but someone has to be hurt first. We have to have someone injured. So the law has to pass, and then someone has to say, hey, you caused hurt to me, you damaged my business, and then that is what we're learning is part of the lawsuit. But we talked to the people in Lawrence because they just had this passed in February of this year, went into effect in June.
Oh, so they've already had this pass out there?
They did,
oh,
in Lawrence.
My God.
In Lawrence.
How is this stuff sneaking by?
That's the problem. It's under the radar until somebody catches it. And they caught it after the fact as well. And so
these council people just pass everything.
They quietly meet and they don't call us, hey, housing industry, come sit down, talk to us, let us know the pros and cons from your point of view. The tenants have the louder voice, they get their stuff in, and then we find out later.
Are you interested in investing in real estate, but you don't feel like you got the time to take a coaching program? I get it, right? You're busy, you're making money, and that's okay, but you want to invest with me because you're like, Troy, I like what you do. I see what you're doing. You're a real deal. Yes, I am. I'm an average Joe. I worked at Burger King. I worked at Red Robin. I started investing in real estate, and I started from absolutely nothing, and I will take you along with my journey, and you can get all the benefits, but you got to be an accredited investor. If you want to invest with me and you want to be a part of something great and you don't have the time, guess what? We're launching a fund that you can be a part of, but you got to be an accredited investor. And if you want to find out more about what that looks like, all you got to do is click the link and we'll show you exactly what that looks like. And guess what? If you're not an accredited investor, then you may down the road be an accredited investor. So definitely learn what that's all about. And enjoy the podcast, and we'll see you on the next one. Stacey, didn't the mayor cancel a meeting with you?
Yeah, that's par for the course. He did. The day of the meeting, a few hours before, and at the same time he canceled it. He said, hey, I've been seeing you on the media, so I know what your position is. Thank you. And so and he did this before when they had the tenant bill of rights. We had 3 meetings set up with him, each one canceled. I think the third one he finally...
What do you think that says about his opinion about what...
That his mind's made up. That he already knows, but then...
Why would his mind be made up if he hasn't heard the whole side of the story?
Does it matter? The tenants haven't heard the whole side of the story, the KC tenants, and yet they do this. Maybe this is what they believe in, the philosophy that they believe in.
Do you think this is completely politically motivated?
What else would be an explanation? Because it defies logic and common sense.
Well, yeah, what about it? Defies logic and common sense. Can you break that down? I know what it is. I just want to hear you kind of articulate it.
The fact that the government think they're going to force people to their whole financial investment, that they think they're going to tell me, oh, ignore it, Stacey. Everything that's worked for you in the past, you got to stop. You got to let whoever wants to rent from you rent from you. Yeah. Really? Anyone who presents themselves should be able to rent from you. You should say yes and give them the key and let them in.
That seems like a good idea to me.
Oh, yeah, right.
Right? Like, oh, you know what? You did 20 years in the penitentiary for a lot of bad stuff, and you've been evicted 52 times?
Yeah, come on in. Come on in. But then remember...
Here's the keys to my car.
Right, exactly, in the bank account. Yeah. But keep in mind that the people who wrote this, that is their goal, is to break us, put us out of business, and that will do it. That'll do it. And not only will it do it if we actually follow, but if we hear what's going on, we're saying, I'm selling, I'm out. That's another part of their goal as well, to get us out of there. And what they know is that the institutional investor is going to come in and buy. Nobody wants that. That's who, when we sold our units after they passed the right to counsel, we sold, every person that bought was an out-of-state investor. Yeah. And so all of those investors buy. So pretty soon we're out of the marketplace, and all that's left are these big old institutions and KC tenants and the other tenant groups across the country. And then perhaps their goal is to say, then here's our target, government. We need you, because now we have to fight the big institutional investors because the small ones have left the industry.
It's crazy. I think personally what their goal is to unionize the tenants and get them to start paying them like you do in a union. Like, you know how if you're a firefighter, you pay a union. If you're a teacher, you pay a union. I think they want the tenants, they call them the tenants union. So I think that's what they're trying to do.
They do that for political power, to be able to say, now we have 10,000 people with us. And so anytime what they do is they find someone that in a building that either you've asked the tenants to move or somehow get some kind of attention, and then they go knock on the door and say, hey, will you join our union? Are you mad at your landlord? Join our union. They'll do that wherever they can across the city, and that's how they get their members and their union. That's how they build the union. So then now they can say, hey, we have 10,000 people in our union. We have political power, elected officials. You better listen to us because we have this big, powerful movement, and you have to listen to us.
Right.
Even though I don't know what the ratio of renters versus homeowners, who votes more, my guess is on the property owners. But if the political class, if they're willing to believe that and cater to them, that's on them. And hopefully we'll tell them at the next ballot box when it's time for elections and we get some of our people in our industry to run for office. We need to step up.
I think it should be you.
Already, I've been there, done that. In 2019, I actually did.
So you didn't get there, or did you get?
I did not. The person that won is the person that is their number one tenant sponsor on the council. So she's
Melissa Robinson?
Absolutely not. Andrea Boo, 6th District at large.
Okay.
Had no experience in the community. No one knew her. But because I'm not a Democrat, I'm not a Republican, not a Democrat either. Because I'm not a Democrat, and they wanted a Democrat in the seat, they recruited someone who had no experience anywhere in anything to run and supported her.
Well, if there's anything I could do to get you in there and help you out,
it won't be me, but I want to find someone who is willing to run. That was my one time to run. And
you're married, right?
I would have been. Huh?
I'm just messing.
What'd you say?
I said you're married, right? You could get your husband to do it.
Oh, look at him. Look, he's asleep. My cute husband. No, but we our goal. I told you. But our goal is to find someone who is in the industry.
Yeah.
Who is active, politically active, who is interested and able to run. We had one person this last time that ran from the industry, and we tried to support them, but we weren't successful. We need to, as a habit, get behind people in our industry to run.
So how can people get a hold of you who are listening to this, and why should they care? Number one, because it might have, let's say they're like, oh, okay, no big deal. I'm in freaking Knoxville, Tennessee, or maybe I'm in Las Vegas, Nevada. This is not affecting me. I shouldn't care. Why should they care, and how can they follow to make sure this doesn't happen in their city?
It's everywhere. Right. It is literally everywhere. If it's not in your city, it's in your state. And it's at the federal level.
Right.
So at the federal level, what they're trying to do is to impact, because they went to the White House. These tenants are meeting at the White House.
Right.
They're meeting in front of Congress, in front of the Senate, in front of the House of Representatives. They are testifying in their meeting. They are everywhere.
Right.
Their goal is to do everything at a federal level. But in the meantime, they're coming to the cities and the states. So at a federal level, one of the things they're trying to do, anyone who has conventional financing on their properties, they're trying to say, because the White House, the President Biden has said, hey, we're not going to be able to do it through Congress because it's Republican Congress. We're not going to be able to do it there. So we're going to do it through our agencies, the regulatory agencies. And so he has his directors and regulators and secretaries of housing and all those things trying to find a way to put the tenant bill of rights into place. One of the things that we're looking at, the FHFA, which regulates conventional financing, in particular on multi-unit buildings, that regulator has been heard. She's heard from 18 different senators that have said, hey, we want you to make, on top of anyone who has federal, this financing, the conventional financing, force them to have source of income, impose source of income on them, rent control where we cap their profits. But their whole goal is to do all of those things through the federal agencies to make it at a national level. So while you thinking you're sitting in a small town somewhere like, oh, they're not here, oh, they are there, and you're going to look up one day and you're going to find a federal law that's going to impact you. So it's everywhere.
How do you feel like where our country's going right now?
I think it's unfortunate. I think it's unfortunate that the socialist movement has taken over. We see it in Congress, and we're seeing it at in our city halls, and we're seeing it at the state levels. Socialism is everywhere, and we know that that is not the answer. The places that have had socialism in housing hasn't worked out.
Right.
It hasn't worked out there, and it's not
Can
going
we
to work
name
here.
one that it has worked for?
No, we can't.
How many can we name that it hasn't worked for?
Many.
All of them?
Including somebody, that's exactly right. We have someone that meets with us that's a housing provider here who is from Argentina. He said he sees the same things that happen there happening here now.
Yeah.
And we have got to stop it.
It's pretty scary. It's super important to pay attention to what's going on. Like I didn't know this was happening.
A lot of people don't.
And then I'm super happy that you and I have now got together, because I would like to help you with this. This is something that I don't care who's listening. This is something that is not right. It's not okay. When you start, and the tenants should understand this too. When your rights are put ahead of somebody else's rights, guess what? you don't have rights.
Right.
Because if they're willing to take somebody else's rights away, they're going to take your rights away too.
And as the tide will turn. And remember, there are two different categories of tenants. The real everyday tenants who are renting our properties. Those are tenants that are trying to work, trying to take care of their families. Those are the real tenants, as I call them. And then you have the activist tenants, the ones who are behind these movements that are not really the voice of our tenants. My tenant, people don't know about this movement. Because it's not important to them. They're trying to feed their families and take care of their families. This activist movement is a political movement. And people need to know that this is not regular everyday tenants.
These people are bought and paid for.
Absolutely.
Like, you're not showing up with a bunch of yellow shirts to show uniformity if you're not paid for. I mean, a lot of the stuff, they found this out, politically about, that they had paid people at the Capitol to let people in. They did a bunch of stuff. I'm not going to go too far down in the weeds, but I'm just saying that, like, what you see is not always exactly how it appears.
That's right.
And who you think is like, oh man, well, there's a bunch of all these people and they're all wearing yellow shirts. They sure must care, or they're getting paid.
Or they don't know any better. Somebody that I know, a family friend, I saw her in a picture. It's like, what are you doing in that picture? I was like, do you know? I said, these people hate me simply because I own real estate. They hate me because of that. And you're in the shirt with them. And she said, oh, we're trying to help people. We're trying to give a voice to tenants. It's like, au contraire, you don't know what they are actually doing.
It's so crazy. And I'm not going to say this person because I had a family reunion, but I'll say somebody in my family who is on a city council in some state, okay? And he was just telling me, like, that it's hard as a council person to vote no. It's hard.
The pressure.
That's what he said. I said to him, he goes, if there was like, he's like, I bet you we said no to 2 things this year, and the way we said no is to come put it back together and we'll say yes. So I think that what I am learning from here is that we as landlords need to build our own union, and we need to build our own lobby and our own super PAC. Do you know Richard Chavez?
I know who he is.
Yeah, he's been on this podcast. He's a good friend of mine, but he got a lot of power because he built Northland KC PAC. We need to build a PAC. This is you and I's business deal right now, where I can help you build a PAC. I really believe that we can, and if we build a PAC, they're going to listen. Okay, if it's just you and me, or if it's just you and a couple other, they're not going to listen.
That's right.
They're going to roll us over. But if we have a PAC and we are taking care of, and we're putting our money where our mouth is, and we have active investors who we've organized, people who own 10 plus properties, 5 plus properties, or whatever it is, and we organize, and you're an organized person. I know how to rally the troops. If we get together, we can reverse the course. I did this back in Las Vegas during the HOA. They were trying to change, the HOA was trying to strip everybody's rights, and half the people didn't know what the hell was going on. There's all these secret laws, Stacey, that are always trying to get passed by the people, and nobody knows about it until it happens. It's like, oh, all of a sudden it's illegal to do this? Oh, okay, I didn't know. That was like, I remember one time when I was paying employees, and somebody had called like the police on me, not like the police, but the
security or something?
No, the compliance police, right? Like I had I had a business, and in real estate, most of your transaction coordinators are independent contractors. And so they said, because this lady worked at my office, they came into my office and they shut me down. They did a stop work order because she was an independent contractor and should have her as an employee. So the state of Nevada then said, that's criminal. We can take you to jail for that. So they're trying to criminalize white collar-ish, like things like this, so that because number one, they know that they can't make money off people who don't have money. They know that if they criminalize it and they punish people like that. So the way our country is going is making me very, very nervous. And I feel like if people like you and me can talk to, if we could talk to those other people like the KC10s, I would talk to them.
We've been there, done that.
They won't talk. They have one motive. We want it our way or no way.
That's it, and that's true. And I'll tell you, there are about 20 laws or so. We're building a national group as well to kind of speak to their national group. We have our regional group that I told you about here in Kansas City. We're building a national group, the National Housing Provider Coalition, where our goal is to speak with one voice for the small and medium independent housing providers. There are about 20 or so laws on the books that you don't know about. And I'm going to show you, before we leave, I'm going to show you some of these laws that are in place.
Can we go through them right now?
Sure.
Okay, so what are we looking at here? Okay, so I'm grabbing your computer right now, and what am I looking at here?
Those are laws that are in place across the country that erode our private property rights.
All right, so she's got squatters' rights, 60, 90, 180-day rent increase notice, threats, sealed, no criminal records, short-term rental restrictions. Yeah, that one just came out, right?
In Kansas City, they basically banned short-term rentals for non-owner occupants in residential zones.
Which is crazy.
It is.
Yeah. Tenants' legal right to counsel.
We got that here too.
Right. What about the property owner legal right to counsel?
Hello?
We don't have that?
Hello. We have to pay for it.
Source
we pay
of
for
income
theirs and ours.
What's a mansion tax?
In California. And this just went into effect, I think, a year ago. Right before it went into effect, a lot of people started selling off their properties. For example, if your property is $5 million or more, you're going to have to pay like a 5%
Yeah,
tax.
I did a video about this, actually. It was called... they've got a bunch of new laws to just take more money from people.
That's right.
So they've got tenants' right of first refusal, eviction moratorium, limit security pet deposit, require paid relocation fees when rent increases.
Yep.
This is in Washington State.
It's not just there. It's other places too. And you can't rent.
Vacancy tax?
They wanted to talk about that here. Casey Tenants wanted to talk about here. If you have a property sitting vacant, they want to tax you. So what that's supposed to do is going to force you now to create housing out of it.
You know, Washington State, if you park your car in your property that's vacant, they charge you a $500 fine.
Crazy. And yet this is passing. This is happening. All of these things are happening right now in our country.
Ban credit reports, tenant anti-harassment, vacancy tax, ban winter and school evictions.
That just passed in Tacoma, Washington.
It did just pass in Tacoma, Washington. Yes, I'm very aware of that. So you're following it on a national level.
We have to.
I am so impressed.
It's everywhere. All of this stuff, because if it's happening there, it's going to happen here. We need to stop all of these policies from happening anywhere. And one of the ways to do that is bring awareness to them, and then for us to mobilize to speak out against them. So
do you think there's any other alternatives to this law where both tenants and landlords would be happy?
If the goal truly is what they say, to house the person who's holding that voucher, then the answer is, like we said, the incentive program. The incentive program is great for me because we know with the Section 8 program, or housing choice vouchers, what they call it, with that it is guaranteed income if everything goes according to plan. So during the pandemic, the properties that we had vouchers never missed a payment. Never missed a payment. So we had some tenants that were not on vouchers, late payment, missed some payments. I love Section 8. Yeah. And so if the goal is truly to help them, that helps me because it gives me guaranteed income. But it also helps that the person with the voucher have a home. Because now I'm participating in something. So incentivize me and more of us so that we participate in the program to create and provide housing for those that need it and that happen to have the vouchers. And let's get those people with the vouchers. Let's get them off the vouchers into home ownership. You don't have to be on the voucher forever. When I hear them talk about, there's like a 10-year waiting list on some of these voucher programs across the country. In 10 years, you can own your home and have it almost paid off. Yeah, we're putting the incentive on, like, it's like, okay, a lot of these people who are on the council, they have children. Would you raise your children that way? Would you raise your children and say, hey, things should be given to you? Apparently they are, though. Yeah, things should be given to you. You shouldn't have to work for anything. But they are. They're doing it. It's crazy. They're doing it. Yeah, it is crazy. And so you have the sense of entitlement amongst these people that are So Stacey, for people who are listening right now, how do they help you with this movement? If they're in Kansas City, if they're listening, or if they're any other state, they want to get involved. How do they get involved with you? Well, a couple different ways. They can call me, text me. What's your phone number? 816-591-5921. As a matter of fact, I'll say it again, 816-591-5921. And that way, if they're local in our area, I can plug them into our local group if they are, and they can text me too. Texting is probably easier. If they're at a national level, I'll plug them into our National Housing Provider Coalition because we're building on 2 levels. People need to have hope. There's some people who may have the vouchers who don't know any better. All they know is their mom, their grandmother. They've had it for years in their family. So that's what we do. It's generational. We need to interrupt and disrupt that. So the disruption needs to happen there. Financial literacy. We're going into classrooms, realtors. With my company, we're going into high schools because the National Association of Realtors, our president says, I want someone in a real estate agent in every high school in the country. So locally, we've taken up the charge. We're going into high schools. We're meeting with, in 2 or 3 weeks, we're meeting with 2 of our high schools so far that are on board with us. And we're going to start talking financial literacy and home ownership at a young age, 11th grade, 12th grade, and high school. This is possible. You got to run for something. You've got to, Stacey. I'm running for the beach and retirement. That's what I'm running for. Which beach? Oh, we love Florida. We love Texas. So in Texas, we love Corpus Christi and Port Aransas. We love Port Aransas. And we love in Florida, like in the Naples area. I'm building a house in Naples right now. Is that right? Ooh. See, we love that place. I'm building one right now. Yep. So if things get hot in Kansas City or cold, if things get cold and they start passing these laws and we can't fight them, then
You know,
Yep.
that money just gets moved.
That's exactly right. And that's what will happen, too.
Yeah, and here's the funny thing is, you mentioned that every property you sold went to an investor that was out of state. I was an investor out of state,
Right,
and
right.
I bought a bunch of properties from investors.
Right.
Like, that's most of my properties. I looked at them; they were all LLCs. I bought them from somebody else.
Right.
But the reality is the reason I came to Kansas City is because there's an excess of housing stock. They don't have a housing problem. What we have is we have a problem repairing houses that the city owns. For years, Land Bank owns probably 10,000 properties that they refuse. I have put in a bid with them, and I have even said, we'll create a program where we teach people how to work. Like, if you're coming out of jail, and I understand that, I know people have been to prison, okay? Mm-hmm. If you're coming out of prison and you're trying to get your self-worth back because you feel terrible about the crime you committed or you're just feeling low, the best way is to restore a house. So I started a nonprofit called Old Glory, a 501(c), where we provide affordable housing, and we put in a bid with Kansas City multiple times and said, hey, listen, we've already done it. We've actually hired what you want. They wanted minorities. I said, that's who we showed the people who we work with. We're like, this is the people who they don't care.
They don't. They talk one thing and they say one thing and they do something else. You're right. They don't. What we know is that there are a lot of vacant properties, just land bank or not.
That's what I'm talking about.
And so what we did, that are not land bank, they may be privately owned, just sitting there deteriorating, blighting a neighborhood. We shared with them a proposal, a rehab loan proposal. Well, all we ask, it's a loan loss reserve. All we're asking the city to do is park some money as collateral, and then we'll work with a small lender that will leverage that and build a bigger pot of money to loan money to, and merely loan money to investors, because we know we can't go to a bank and get money the same way others do. And so get us a friendly lender, and we're going to borrow the money, we're going to pay it back, and let us go those vacant properties, let us buy those properties, renovate them, and get them into useful inventory. Let us do that. Loan loss reserve, a loan rehab program. Where is it?
Why don't we take the tenants and say, hey, let's teach you and educate you, versus say, you know what, everything that you did was wrong, but now we're going to change a law to make it okay.
That's right. And so that too. All of those things. So we used to do one thing that we did during the pandemic, and we actually did this before in person, because solutions. Solutions. What are the answers? I see someone who is hopeless. They're making minimum wage, and then you hear the tenant saying, "You can't rent a two-bedroom apartment on minimum wage." No, you can't. But what you can do is you can increase your income. So we did a job fair, and my thought about the job fair is, we hear so much about raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. So what we did is we had a job fair where we asked the employers who paid $15 an hour or more to participate. When we did it over the pandemic, we did it virtually. We had almost 30-something employers. We sat there all day, having each employer come on. All of them paid over $15 an hour. We were getting them up until the day of, saying, hey, I have a job opening, can I participate? It's like, yes. We invited tenants, we invited housing providers, anybody in the community. We were on the news talking about it. Anyone who was looking for a job that paid over $15 an hour, come on. We had all kinds of companies that had them. So you could one of our tenants happened to be on one of the calls too, I didn't realize that, but you can go from minimum wage to double your salary in one phone call with one job. One job changes your whole life. Many people don't know those jobs are out there. And some of those jobs, most of them, they were saying, that you can be high school graduates, all you need, and you're gonna make $20, $25 an hour. People, if you don't know that, you don't know it. And so our goal was to tell them there are jobs out there. Go get one of these jobs.
Yeah, I don't even think people are applying for jobs these days. I've got multiple jobs for $20, $30 an hour. I can't even get anybody to apply for them. And the
narrative that the tenants have is, we can't afford these jobs. $1,200 is not affordable. It's affordable to somebody. Well,
listen, I worked for $8 an hour for minimum wage, and I owned my own house. I worked 2 jobs. Some of them just don't want it bad enough.
Or they don't know. I think some of them, they may not want it, but I want them to know first that it's an option. So know that it's an option, that you could go out there and get a job, work 2 jobs. You can own a home.
Right.
All of these things are possible. And then once they know it, if they make a different decision, it's a different story. But I think a lot of the people just don't know it, and we need to spread the word to them that there is hope and there are possibilities and opportunities out there. We need to interrupt their generational family patterns and say there's a different way, there's a better way.
Right. All right. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you spending your time with me here and really breaking it down. Do you have any socials that people can follow you on, or is the phone number the best way to contact you?
They're going to like me on Twitter. They can find me on Twitter. Stacey KC Agent is my Twitter handle. That's probably the best way and the place where I'm most active is Twitter. And then if they text me, call me, I'll point them to wherever the best place is at National or whatever. And then we do have a real estate, our website. I'll give you the website address when I look it up in a minute.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show. I appreciate you sharing everything. And if you want to come on again and you want to talk more, if you want to talk on the sidelines and talk more about it, I'm definitely interested.
All the above.
You're the person to get this thing stopped. I fully believe that you need someone who's passionate, who's smart, who's driven, and you're all of those qualities. So I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. And thank you for being engaged. You're all of those things back at you too. So let's team up, and we have some smart minds here. Let's do something. Let's change the narrative. Let's do it.
I'm game. 100%.
Me too.
All right, cool. Peace. So I wanted to interrupt you in this podcast and just take a quick moment to tell you two things. Number one, we do this for free for you. I haven't made a nickel on social media at all. I'm doing this to provide you enough value. So all I'm asking for you to do is share it and give us a 5-star review. It'll totally help us out, and I really appreciate it. The other thing, if you want more free resources like our free Facebook group, it's Millionaire Mentorship Real Estate Investing on Facebook. All you got to do is join it. It's free. It doesn't cost anything, and there's lots of resources there, and we'll definitely give you those for free, no charge. Here's the other thing. If you're serious about investing in real estate and you're ready to take action, I have a program. No matter where you're at in your real estate journey, I can help you out. I don't care if you've got 5 houses, 10 houses, no houses, 100 houses. I've got something that I can share with you that's going to make you a lot of money. And if you want to become financially free and you're brand new to real estate investing, this is the absolute thing you want to do. And here's the thing. What I've learned from most of my students right now is that it's not just an investing program. It's a mindset program. We're going to change the way you think about money. If you want to start investing, make sure you schedule a call with me and my team, and let's get the ball rolling. Guess what else? If you are like, man, I don't got the time and I make tons of money, I just enjoy listening to what you're going to say, that's cool too. We actually have set up a fund where you can invest with us, but you got to be an accredited investor. If you want to find out what that looks like, all you got to do is click the link in my bio, fill out the form. It takes you about 2 seconds, and then we'll let you know about the deals that we're doing. We're doing big deals in Kansas City. And this year, I think we'll do 2 huge deals in Kansas City. I'm looking at a few right now, and I want you to be a part of it. And if you've got more money than time, then that's what you should do. If you got more time than money, then schedule a call with me and my team, and we'll get you into our coaching program so that you can have more money than time.